Unfortunately, with the way things have been going and the news that has been coming out recently, crypto is destined to go back to zero or near the bottoms over the next few months, right? Currently, we're at roughly 85,000, but in 2 months, it is expected for us to be back at pretty much the lows of 2020, 2021, 2022, back to 15,000. At least that's what some people think, which means they're absolute clowns. And the only reason why I ever brought this up was to just trick you guys, for a little April Fool's joke. All right. So that's, if you got scared, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I get it. Pretty crap April Fool's joke. But, I had to add a little bit of twist and turn because some people genuinely believe that we are actually going to be coming back to, some of these very, very low prices all the way back down to, roughly, the 15 to 20K mark. I don't know if these people are just farming. I don't know if these people are delusional or, if they foresee the future. But at this current moment, there is literally nothing suggesting that we will ever come back to those prices, especially that there's so much world adoption and just, I mean, you know what? I'm not even going to entertain it. But, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, how are my snipers doing today? I hope you guys are doing fantastic. Listen, today we're going to be giving you a quick market overview. I did say, once the monthly candle closes for March and the quarterly candle, because, January, February, March, then I will cover, Bitcoin dominance a little bit more. And I will be talking about altcoin dominance, which is very, very, very important. So look, the monthly candle for March, it was pretty weak. It was pretty kind of crap. And that is exactly what we wanted to see, right? February was, kind of a disaster, went from, $102,000 all the way down to roughly 78,000 at one point. But now April, ladies and gentlemen, is looking very, very solid. Yes, we are only one day in, but I did say that, for me, I believe there are reversal signs, right? We talked about, how a bounce back off of the 80K mark, more or less, is going to be, very probable. And, if it were to go a little bit lower, then we might go back down to 78,000. At this current moment, we are looking very, very nice. Of course, for me to be, 100% bullish, we have to, take over some structure, some of these candles. But look, at this current moment, we are building weeks of support over here. Now, that doesn't mean that at one point we won't ever dip, right? We still have this weekly wick over here, and we have that institutional candle. So, if we were to dive back down to 79,000 at one point, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me, okay? Overall, I do believe in the bigger picture that this is simply a higher low. Okay. So we have a high here, we have a low here, we have a high here, and I believe, generally speaking, around this red mark, right? Around these, let's just say, me being generous, like 77 to 82K mark is going to be roughly the higher low. Now, what does that mean? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the way the markets work when something is bullish or bearish is that it usually creates a staircase, right? So if we are creating a staircase that looks like this, then where are we going? We're going up, right? But if we create a staircase that looks something like this, where are we going? That looks like we are going down. Very, very simple, concepts, right? You have a high, you have a low. We can start from here. We have a low, a high, a lower high, right? Because this low is higher than this. We have a higher high because this high is higher than this. This low is higher than this. And then this high is higher than this one over here, right? Usually when we start seeing markets shift, they'll do something like this, or they go sideways before they do something like this. But then eventually you see, sometimes you see a lower low, right? This low over here is slightly lower than this one, so that's already indication the markets are reversing, right? We try pulling back up. Oh, we don't have enough momentum to go back to up to these highs or higher. We create a lower high, so a change of momentum we can see, and the concept continues, and you can see, right? Very, very simple, but very, very important and efficient. Now here's the thing, right? On a higher time frame, it's sometimes scary, right? Because it takes weeks or months for us to fully see the picture, right? People here were super, super up and down. Every time it would go up, oh, Bitcoin's flying. Every time we go down, Bitcoin's done for. Every time we go up, Bitcoin's flying. Every time we go down, Bitcoin's done for. And and people just kept flip flopping for roughly 7.5 months until we finally exploded. And the same thing happened in the last 2 months. People are like, oh, Bitcoin's done for. We're going back down to 50K, 60K. Where the cycle's over. The cycle is over. For me, ladies and gentlemen, it's not. It's really, really not. We're just following fundamentals. It just takes a lot of time to build up. Okay. It takes weeks and weeks of data to build a low, to build a high, to crash, to pump. It takes a long time. So you just have to be patient. You have to be, a little bit less emotional and just look at how things are operating. Things dumped from 87K to 81 and a half, and people thought it's over. We're going down to 70, we're now 65. And say, guys, just relax, just relax. Technical analysis suggested there's a lot of support. Technical analysis suggested that reversals are, coming, right? So, just don't, flip the script and, every day. One day it's, oh no, we're crashing. One day we're pumping. When they were pumping, right? Just stay calm. But look, overall, right? This 3 month candle was very, very beautiful. I do believe, there's a small chance that April does, take out this 3 month candle before we completely go up, just because, I wouldn't be surprised there's some kind of liquidity sweep. But overall, things are looking fantastic, right? When we compare, where we're at right now, even to last time, right? We have something very, very similar. Hopefully, it won't be exactly the same where we have to wait like 7 months before an expansion. But, even something like here, right, in the previous cycle, we can see that when we were trying recovering, price never went that high. And the monthly candles or the 3 month candles were terrible. And then we crashed, right? We crashed. And then, the whole cycle was over. But for me, I still believe, with the context of market, with the news that we're getting, that we will be pumping up higher. Altcoin dominance still, sorry, Bitcoin dominance still has a long way to go, of roughly, for me, 6 to 11% roughly more. I believe that we will be pumping over, the next few weeks. I do believe that we will sell off of this big area of, roughly 69 to 71%. That is where I believe we'll get something very, very identical, where we go up, we crash a decent amount, like the way we crashed here, go sideways for a couple weeks before we crash down, right? Before we crash down. That is what I truly believe. And remember, once this starts happening, right? Once we have this big slide of momentum, that is when altcoins are going to start pumping more and more. Then it's going to go sideways. Altcoins are going to pump a little bit more, consolidate, and then they're going to have their final pump when Bitcoin dominance goes down, right? So that is what I expect. When we go to something like, the altcoin dominance, in terms of not including the top 10, things are looking fairly weak, right? We are kind of ranging and consolidating between, let's just say, the 8% to, almost 9%. We have rejected multiple times. So we have to see if we, go into this wick and reverse. If we do not, then there's a good chance that we will go back down to 650, right? Back down to 650, or at the minimum, we will sweep, the 7.77%, right? Got to remember that these charts operate the exact same as other charts, as if this was a coin. So you got to remember, you got to have the order blocks ready, you got to have the liquidity sweeps in mind, the imbalances. It all works the same. However, even though things may be going lower potentially, you have to realize that, when things did go lower last time, they reversed so much so quick, and then altcoin season happened, which is what I believe is something similar is going to work out. If we don't, dump, then we are going to start reversing very, very quickly. If we do dump a little bit lower, then that's going to be the final time, and we're going to start recovering very, very quickly. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, we will actually be creating new highs upwards of, even 25%, right? I believe anywhere between the 28 to 22%, I get it, it's a very, very big zone, is where we're going to probably top out, which is good, because every percent for, altcoin dominance outside the top 10 it's a lot, right? It is a lot. So I do believe we are going to create new highs. Even if we took the Fibonacci tool, take it, let's say, from the bottom somewhere here. The reason why I made the bottoms, somewhere down here is because roughly here, there's data, there's good overall just support in this area. So even if, like I said, we were to create new highs, the 1.68 or the 1.618 area, 28%, Maybe we'll go here, but that would be really, really crazy. I really doubt that. So, creating new highs going up to 20% makes sense. So we'll see how everything plays out. I'm personally super, super optimistic on altcoins. I do think over the next few weeks going to be some of your last final chance to buying it. So if you are planning on buying it, make sure to do your research. Make sure, you double check everything. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor, but the data does not lie.